Hello everyone, and welcome to today's session, How to Future-Proof Hiring with Talent Intelligence. My name is Connor Volpe, and in addition to being a product marketer by day at Eightfold, today I'll be your host, your MC. Really, it's my job to shepherd you through today's session, and we got a really good one lined up for you. But before we dive in, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the time, thank you for the attention. We know everybody's got a really busy schedule out there, so we sincerely appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. I'll be joined by two wonderful speakers today. The first of which you'll see is Hisham Zar. He is our head of talent insights at Eightfold, and he and his team leveraged Eightfold technology to dig deep and discover insights about the market, where skills are headed, industries. It's some really cool stuff, and I'm really excited he's gonna be able to share that with you today. We're also gonna be joined by Justin Guillot. Justin is a director of talent sourcing at Activision, and we're gonna chat with him about some of the things he and his organization have done to become more proactive, more agile, and to start to future-proof some of what they do. So we're gonna get into them in just a moment, but first I wanna talk you through a little bit about where Eightfold sees the current state of TA. We're in a bit of an uncertain world, and we use the adjective uncertain. I'm sure you all may have maybe some more colorful adjectives you would choose to use, but it's been a heck of a time. And in fact, it's been a perfect storm over the last 2.5 years, and one of the reasons for that is we've seen this crazy stopping and starting of hiring. And in fact, we're in a bit of a microcosm of that right now. Just a few months ago, we were in the Great Resignation. And now there's word of potentially a recession, and we're trying to figure out which one is it. There's almost twice the amount of open roles that there are people to fill them. And yet massive companies like Amazon and Facebook and Google have announced hiring pauses, maybe hiring slowdowns. And then still there's pent-up demand for positions that are still out there. And of course, this has meant a pushing and pulling of what TA has had to do the past 2.5 years, and it has been a lot. Now, of course, one of the symptoms of that is this talent reshuffling. We have seen this incredible redistribution of talent that is kind of unprecedented in modern times. And this has led to people desiring a work from anywhere mindset, or increased compensation packages, or even moving between industries at a rate that we haven't seen. So it's been kind of crazy. And the last thing that we want to call out here is skills that we may have seen as maybe more evergreen or timeless. With the rapid pace of innovation, something that we thought would stand the test of time is now turning over faster than faster. So all of a sudden when new skills arise, it's hard to find the folks who can fill those needs. There's one thing we've learned, it's that there's a new pace of change. The change is constant, and it is happening faster than ever before. Unfortunately, that has meant for TA teams in particular, this waxing and waning of hiring, this talent reshuffling, this skills evolution, that TA teams have often had to be reactive, and that is taxing. That is why so many TA teams are just burnt out. Something has got to give. And so that's why we want to talk today about being more proactive, trying to future-proof, to be more agile, to secure that place at the table so TA can be that strategic enabler of the business. Now the question is, how do we do that, right? How do we make that happen? Well, there have been some clues. Let's look at some of our thought leaders in this space, some of these people who we've all come to know and respect, like Josh Bersin, Forbes, David Green. Across the board for their predictions for 2022, they called out skills as something that is really, really important. Josh Bersin in particular, for example, he called out in his number 3 and number 7 predictions that skills and skills intelligence and talent intelligence are going to be crucial. Forbes mentioned that this idea of focusing in on degrees and experience, maybe another track people need to consider is transferable skills and skills learned. And then finally, David Green mentioned all about a skills-based organization. And to us at Eightfold, this is where the rubber starts to meet the road. Embracing skills will help organizations get out ahead of what's coming, to try to see into the future and develop an agile organization and talent strategy. Again, the question is why, how do we make these skills help us be more proactive? It starts with what a skill actually is. A skill is the ability to do something that comes from training, experience, or practice. They can be learned, they can be honed, but they don't come with a degree necessarily. They don't require a certification or a certain title or just come with years of experience. For example, for me, just because I've worked in product marketing for a long time doesn't mean I have every single skill required of a product marketer. I'd like to think I have a few, but we'll see. Core to this idea and core to why skills are so important, though, is they can be broken down into a common currency, something that can be analyzed across individuals, companies, even industries. So for example, if I was to say that I am proficient at Excel, something that maybe a lot of us have put on a resume at one time that maybe was more or less true. Let's say I'm very proficient at Excel. That skill comes with me. If I was to then move to a company that worked in healthcare, if I was to work in a company that worked in manufacturing, a big company, a small company, that skill is transferable. I take it with me. So by understanding and tracking and analyzing the skills at an individual level, at a company level, and at an industry level, we can learn a lot and we can see where things are going. And this is one of the reasons I'm so excited to have Hisham here with us today, because some of the work he and his team do is exactly this, to be able to analyze an industry and skills to see where things are going to get out ahead. Because by seeing which skills are rising and falling, we can start to make key strategic decisions about the direction of TA teams. That is skills-based hiring, and that there's so much to offer there. So I have a simplified view of this for you, but I think it does a really good job of painting a picture of what this could be like. Perhaps you're looking for someone in marketing, for example. There's a set of skills you're looking for around communications, virtualization, so on and so forth. Now, obviously, you would start your search by looking for marketers. That makes sense. But what if we could show you adjacent skill sets that might also be a match, things you can take from other people you can recruit in your talent pool, and even the overlap of skills that you need for this job. By doing that, we're helping you find talent pools you may not have considered and widen the aperture, which allows you to be more agile and respond to change faster, hire from different areas, different disciplines, or even other industries. Now, of course, this is not just about widening the aperture. This is about even hiring for potential. We don't want to just hire someone for what they have done or what they do today. We can hire for what they can be tomorrow because we understand their skills and their skill trajectory. We can also be more proactive and predictive by understanding where the market is going, understanding where there might be a skills surplus in our own organization or in the market, or maybe understanding where there are skills that aren't quite out there yet and need to prioritize. TA organizations can begin to proactively strategize and hire for some of these things, so it's not just only happening when it's a critical issue. And then finally, we can be more inclusive. With these expanded talent pools, we can hire people from all different walks of life, from different industries, different ages. It allows us to broaden our scope. And again, that's not only just inclusive, but it allows us to be more agile as well. Now, this is music to our ears about being more inclusive and including more people, because at Eightfold, we believe in finding the right career for everyone in the world. In fact, this sign hangs in our office today. Now, this is a lofty goal, don't get me wrong, but it is something we work with our customers every single day to try to do, to help them hire the right person for the right job so that we all can find our right career. And how we do that is with AI, and that starts with our data. Eightfold brings AI skills intelligence into a broader deep learning model, and this is where the magic is made. We start with data from your enterprise systems, and then we enrich that with public data, which adds context. And perhaps the biggest differentiator for us, our platform intelligence learns from a global data set with over 1 billion unique profiles and 1 million unique skills. And these global data sets are updated in real time, so insights about each individual's potential give you the full current picture of what they've done, and more importantly, what they can do. We want to help you hire for potential and hire for what someone can be tomorrow as well as what they can be today. Now, this AI informs our talent intelligence platform, which is designed to be your system of talent intelligence. And it is on top of this platform that we then apply the Eightfold modules, and there are 3. So we have our talent management, which turns intelligence inwards and focuses on your employees, delivering personalized career paths that unlock each individual's potential. We then, of course, have talent acquisition. This delivers an unbiased candidate and recruiter experience that is based on skills and potential. We use AI to remove bias, to increase diversity, and ultimately reduce time to fill by matching a candidate to all the positions that they have the potential to be successful in. Finally, we have Talent Flex, and this is designed specifically for your contractor workforce at scale. This is how we do talent intelligence, and this is how we live up to trying to find the right career for everyone in the world. Now, hopefully that gives you some idea of what we do here at Eightfold. And with that, I'd like to welcome up Hisham Zar to show some of the skills and market insights that he and his team have uncovered using our technology. Hisham?
Thank you, Connor. Really excited to be talking to all of you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. So, as Connor mentioned, my name is Hisham Zar, and I'm the head of Insights and Analytics at Eightfold. What we will be covering today, so two really important topics. One, we're going to start with some market insights from Eightfold's talent intelligence platform. Really cool insights there to share with you. The second topic that we're going to cover is, some potential solutions to help you overcome some of the TA challenges and future-proof your organization. So let's start by defining digital transformation. Digital transformation is a foundational change in how an organization delivers value to customers and employees. So companies need to digitally transform to compete and remain relevant. A recent study by McKinsey found that the average lifespan of companies listed in the S&P 500 was 61 years back in 1958. Today, it is less than 18 years. The adoption of the following digital trends that you're seeing on screen and the need to continually digitally transform are bringing the need for new roles such as cloud engineer, cloud architect, data engineer, data scientist, and IoT developer. Now, COVID, of course, didn't help. It has further accelerated digital transformations. So global yearly spend on digital transformations, and this is business practices, products, and organizations, is forecasted to reach 3.3 trillion by 2026, which is more than double the amount spent in 2021. So we've analyzed the roles in demand in the US between July 2021 and December 2021. The analysis looked into the demand in the top 10 largest high-tech companies as well as other industries. Here's what we found. 7 of the top 10 roles are in demand in high-tech and other industries. And then the second finding was that the top 10 roles account for more than 55% of the job openings in high-tech. What does that mean? The key takeaway here for you is that companies are finding themselves competing over the same talent pool. And I'm sure you've been experiencing this firsthand. We've also analyzed the fastest rising technology roles and skills in the largest high-tech companies. As you can see, the impact of the emerging digital trends that we discussed earlier, cloud computing, AI, and big data, for example, was very evident in our analysis. This just goes to show that the adoption of the digital trends is on the rise, and the need and competition for such digital talent will only intensify. Then we found something very interesting when we analyzed 5 of the emerging tech roles. Despite the fact that the roles were rising, there was a significant number of declining skills within the top skills. But why is that? Well, that's because the skill mix for roles has been changing very fast. Let's take the software engineer role, for example. There's no overlap whatsoever between the fastest rising skills back in 2010 versus 2020. So that raises the question, what should companies do to hire the right talent and cover any skill gaps they have to meet their strategic objectives? Well, companies should do a few things, but I'm gonna tackle a couple of them in our session today. 1, they should build a skills-based organization. 2, they should hire for potential. And then 3, they should upskill their existing workforce. So let's take a look at the first 2 together. I really like this quote from the book Reinventing Jobs. Leaders need a new operating system for work. It, which referring to the new operating system, must identify and deploy workers based on their skills and capabilities, not their job descriptions. So the rise of the talent intelligence platform increased the need for a skills portfolio, which is also known as skills taxonomy. A skills portfolio is the list of skills that are needed for a given role. So if a person's job description matches what he or she are actually doing in their roles, then they should consider themselves lucky nowadays. So job descriptions are subjective, unrealistic. It seems like a wish list at times. It's static, it's single-purposed, while a skills portfolio is current, it's objective, it's dynamic, it's multi-purpose. So skills portfolio has many benefits, but to you as a TA professional specifically, skills portfolio can tremendously help with build, buy, or borrow talent decisions. There's a simple three-step approach to developing a skills portfolio, and I'll walk you through an example. So first, you need to identify the list of roles and benchmarks. Second, you need to extract the top skills as well as the fastest rising skills per role. And then third, you need to validate and update the list. Let's walk through an example together. So let's take the client processing and infrastructure engineering job families. We need to first identify the list of unique roles in these job families. And then for each job family, we need to identify the benchmark companies. Think of benchmark companies or industries as the industries that would like to reference for the list of skills for these roles. The second step, as we mentioned, is extracting the skills by role based on the benchmark industries that we've designated. Let's assume we have a fraud detection specialist as a role, and this is based on banking. So we'll then extract the top skills for this role in banking. The third step is to validate those skills internally. This is when an SME, which can be someone from within the job function or even an HR BP, you can look at those skills and validate them based on the internal context, domain knowledge, and so on. To future-proof the roles, which is very, very important, one needs to augment the validation step by extracting and using the fastest rising skills in each job function. So providing that plus the list of top skills, this is how you can come up with a future-proofed role. Lastly, you need to ingest the completed skills portfolio into a talent intelligence platform to use in your talent acquisition needs. In today's ever-changing skills mix, this will also help maintain a dynamic and current skills portfolio for you to hire against. The last topic that I'd like to discuss is hiring for potential. So to help overcome the talent shortage and the competition over the same talent pool, adopting a hiring for potential approach will help you expand the talent pool. But what do we actually mean by that? Well, it starts by looking at the adjacent skills that Connor was talking about earlier for a given role and hiring against those skills instead. Yes, some upskilling will be required, but it might take you just as long, if not longer, to find the exact talent that you're looking for. Let me just give you a quick example here. Python is an emerging skill. Everybody's talking about Python. By looking for individuals with adjacent skills to Python, you can expand your pool of candidates by 3x. So this is what we mean by hiring for potential. And this is something that is out there to help TA professionals nowadays. Thank you for watching this session. Connor, back to you.
All right, thank you, Hisham. That was awesome. I feel like I learn a lot after watching Hisham speak. So I'm glad he got to share all that with you. I'm now joined by Justin Guillot and Hisham for a little three-way chat. First, Justin, we just heard from Hisham, but we're very happy to have you. Would you mind just introducing yourself, telling us a bit about Activision and what your role is there?
Thank you, Connor. Excited to be here. My name again, as Connor mentioned, is Justin Guillot. I'm the Director of Talent Sourcing at Activision Blizzard. My role here comprises of leading a team of about 30 individual sourcers, and our main goal is to ensure that we keep businesses happy with candidates on a regular basis. And we've went through quite the transformation lately, going through the software transformation with Eightfold from many different systems to one in-house, fully encompassed system with Eightfold.
So I'd actually love to have you expand on that a bit, because that's a hell of an undertaking to go from many different systems to consolidating. I know that's taken a while. So can you walk us through where that stands now?
Yeah, so currently we have about 150 users all in Eightfold in one ecosystem. Previously we had 3 separate CRMs, 3 separate ATSs, and now we're all in kind of 2 shared systems between Eightfold and Workday Recruit. It's really consolidated our efforts, and it's given us an unbelievable amount of visual throughput from candidates' previous experience with our organization and their future potential within our organization. For example, we've had numbers of candidates who've applied 2-3 years ago. Now we have that data readily visible, so we can then go drive an engagement strategy around people who you had applied at one point in time.
So that's awesome. I think one thing you've also mentioned that you now have better views from not only the recruiting side of the house, but the sourcing side of the house. Everybody actually looks at the same data. Is that correct?
Yes, that's been one of our biggest helpful pieces. Is we used to have instances on a regular basis where candidates would be actively interviewing with one of our other business units, and because we had disconnected systems, we would solicit them while they're going to an on-site interview with one of our other businesses, which isn't a great candidate experience. So this really allows us to have, again, that lens into everything that's going across our entire organization.
Awesome. And then I know as part of this whole effort, you've taken steps to move from more reactive to proactive. I know it's always a work in progress, right? But what are some of the things that you and your teams at Activision have done to try to take some of those steps to move from reactive to proactive?
So now that our eightfold instance has almost 1 million candidates in it, we actually are in this unique situation where we can start being proactive before roles have ever opened or before they're even live on our sites. We'll go have our intake meetings with hiring managers, and using Eightfold's system, we'll be able to look at our current database and serve up almost instantaneously potential candidates, as well as to Hisham's earlier point, using skills and skill adjacency, show how the market elasticizes based off of specifics that we're looking for in candidates, right? If you have one skill that's required, see how that impacts your potential to hire for that role. All too many times we've had experiences where hiring managers may or may not need something specifically, but you don't find that out until you've had candidates interview or get very close to the end of the process. This allows us to get ahead of that and have that stuff figured out in that initial intake call.
Awesome. So I want to come back to that, but actually, Hisham, I want to come to you next with one of the things I know you've been working on is this future ready CI pool. And frankly, I think, as Justin was talking about, they're making steps to make their own talent pools more future ready and proactive. But can you talk us through what that project is and what you've been up to there?
Oh, for sure. So we've realized that the CIO organization structure is something that every company has in common, and every company is struggling to figure out, okay, what goes under the hood? What are the skills that are needed? And, to start off, how does that organization structure look like? The key takeaways there were really, really cool to uncover through data and research that we've performed. So first, the CIO org nowadays is specialized. Think back in the days, right? You used to have one IT manager that does system admin work, even some web development and so on and so forth. That's not the case anymore. Even the software engineering role has evolved. Now, a software engineer focuses on more of the business logic, but you have, front-end engineer, back-end developer, and so on. So there's a lot of specialization in that org. The second key takeaway that we managed to uncover is agility, right? Nowadays, when you look at the CIO organization structure, you see the agile way of working is embedded in that org. And this is, we've looked at the organization structures in some of the top companies, and that's what we found. Last but not least, we found that, if you want to build that org, you cannot build it for today. Why? The half-life or shelf life of a skill is 5 years. On the technical side, for some of the technical roles, it's actually 2+ years. So we're talking 2.5 years, and then that skill starts going downwards. So this is why it's important to future-proof that role and not only look at the top skills, but also look at the fastest rising skills. And that's how we ended up with what we call the future-ready CIO organization structure, not just from a structure standpoint, but also from the skill set standpoint.
No, that's fascinating. I'm sure, Justin, that's something that you can appreciate in the video game industry where things are changing extremely rapidly, especially as it relates to technical skills. But Hisham, I want to ask another question for you there, which is we've alluded to, or at least I alluded to, that the way you're able to pull these insights is by using the Eightfold technology. And I know there's a whole, we can open up Pandora's box here, but just can you give an overview to folks on the line about just how you're able to determine some of these things across industries, across verticals? It's pretty fascinating. Can you just talk through a little bit about how you're able to do that?
For sure. So when it comes to industries, right, we get to define what an industry is, right? What are those top 20 companies that constitute that industry for us to be able to extract the best practices or the insights, and that way we can carve out olden noise. But what was really interesting there, Connor, that I would like to talk about is the commonalities when we looked at those industry verticals, and that just jumped out, to us in terms of, okay, we see a lot of these roles are rising, but when you start looking under the hood, and this is across all industries, that's when you start seeing a mix of rising, stable, and declining skills. But that was when we wanted to dive a little bit deeper onto that and see why, we had to go back in time and look at, okay, back in 2010, for example, what was the skill mix of a software engineer or a software developer or a solution architect? What about today? And that's when we realized, okay, fine, this is because the skill mix is changing, and it's changing very, very fast. And that wasn't just because of just in one industry, or because of something that happened in one specific industry. That was across the board. And the way we're able to do that, Connor, is by leveraging the Eightfold platform, right? We have a deep learning platform, which is powered by the largest data set. And of course, we do aggregate anonymized analysis, and we're just there to derive those insights.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think that hopefully that's helpful for folks to better understand how we're able to do some of this. Now, Justin, you were talking about, or actually we were just talking with Hisham about the rising, falling nature of skills, how quickly things are changing. And you were talking about, I think you mentioned some of like the relationships with hiring managers and how those, I'm going to ask a question about like, how have those changed given some of the changes that you all have made at Activision, and like how those intake meetings are starting to go now?
Yeah, for us, the biggest upside has been, again, the ability for us to get the right candidate pool in the very beginning, because it creates a much more collaborative experience for hiring managers. We operate in a way where we tend to work on similar positions across the broad organization. So it may be this hiring manager's first time ever opening this role, but we'll bring somebody in who already has a talent pool. They're already looking at candidates. They can kind of test the edge cases, because more times than not, those candidates can make great employees and be great hires. And so we always try to find those corners and those kind of adjacent areas as early as possible. So as I mentioned earlier, we're not 3-4 months down the road realizing that, we had a great example of a graphics engineer that worked at Invisalign, right? You would never think that, somebody who works at a retainer company would be able to have translatable skills to a video game company. But when we're looking at things objectively in a skill-based scenario, you see that this individual is doing real-time rendering as a dentist scans the inside of your mouth. Someone has to do that work. That's all happening live. It's all happening in real time. And at a very objective, high level, that is exactly what we do in our graphics engineering roles. They are constructing pictures in real time based off of information fed from them from a computer. So in a perfect world, these things are actually adjacent. And that was a candidate that we've actually placed and works here at our organization. So it's those unique abilities for us to say, well, would you look at someone like this? Look, like they're pretty high up on this list and they have all the skills you're looking for. So does that implicit experience really matter, or is that just the nice to have? And we see a lot of that. We see that implicit experience is really just the nice to have, whereas historically it's always been a must have in our industry. So we're getting to a place where we can really evolve our talent pool and begin to pull in candidates from other industries as they lean towards the technology that we tend to use.
No, that's brilliant. It's a perfect example. Maybe I'll steal that instead of the marketing and community manager example, to use the Invisalign example. But no, actually, I want to ask like a bit of a follow-up question there, because obviously, like you mentioned, that was a change in your industry to go from what has previously been a required skill, something that was almost like non-negotiable, to more of an implicit one. And it sounds like, luckily, at Activision, you've had some success in changing minds, changing how that goes. But that has to help, at least for you, to be more agile in some of these hirings that you need to make. Because while I'm sure the video game industry gets plenty of applications, I'm sure there are still skills that are very hard to find.
Yeah, exactly. We're in a situation where we get about 250,000 applicants a year, which is an insane amount. It's very large. It's a lot to go through, but we're also in a situation where, as you mentioned, some roles we have never have an applicant. Their entire life cycle, except somebody that was sourced or referred, they will never have an inbound applicant. So we really have to be able to balance both of those within our ecosystem, and that's where those skill adjacencies help, because it helps us on the roles we're getting 10,000 applicants. It helps us filter down very quickly the ones that are really well qualified. And for the roles that aren't, it gives us a good starting block to run our searches and continuing to find talent. Maybe, certain markets of ours, there's only 500 people in North America that may do it in our industry. So we really have to leverage that data to start looking elsewhere. And it's been a bit of a culture change and a little bit of a shift, but it's something that we have many hiring managers and teams that have a very wide appetite for it, because they understand that this is a finite industry if we're only looking within this industry.
Awesome. So Hisham, I want to ask you a question based on what Justin was just talking about, which is that there's really only so many people out there in the world who might have a particular skill at a particular time. And we're talking about hiring for potential, right? Like this idea of someone has a certain set of skills that there's a high potential for them to learn another one. And I'd love to hear more about what you have to say about that, but also just there's an idea of potentially like, I know you work a lot with companies about how they redistribute talent within their own organization and maybe hire an internal hire who maybe has the skills to move into another role. So I know that's something that you've also been focused on advising some of our customers. So I'd just love to hear what you have to say about that idea of hiring for potential and maybe even internal hiring as well.
Of course. Yeah, thank you for that question, Connor. And by the way, what Justin just shared is, that embodies, hiring for potential at, with what Activision is doing, which is amazing, which is great. And that's how you can find those gems, right? That's how you can find, that great talent, because you can wait for the right candidate exactly as you want them, to show up at your door and for you to interview them and welcome them on board. That's going to take a long time, especially in today's, competitive marketplace. So that is one. Two, again, when you're looking at someone's resume, how can you tell, as a human, how can you infer the skills that they have? It's really tough. That's where you need, a talent intelligence platform. And hiring for potential today helps really expand that talent pool. Let me just give you one, statistics. As of, I think today, there are around 1.5 to 2 million Python developers. And there's a lot of need, for those individuals with the Python skills. It's really hard to find, right? And you're gonna be competing over the same talent. Look at adjacent skills. I am the perfect example of that. I know Java. I've coded, using Java back in school and even during my master's degree. But then I had this interest in AI and machine learning that was back in 2020. And so I went back to school. I did a 6 months program to learn AI and machine learning, and I coded with Python. It was very easy for me, right, to pick up Python, since I already knew Java. And that's what we're seeing at our customers as well. They're not hiring like to like, right? And plus it gets boring, right? If you've done project management work, here I am now applying for another project management role, for example. But some people, they don't want that. Some people are acquiring additional skill sets internally, right? And they want to be recognized, and they want to move within the same company to a different role where they can put those new skill sets to use. And that internal mobility helps with retention, helps with employee satisfaction. So now, someone who's a project manager, for example, and does not have ambition to move to another project manager role, can acquire those additional skills and move, to the role that he or she wishes to move into.
Awesome. And building off that, my question is going to be for the both of you, which is that this idea of hiring for potential, it sounds great. You guys both made impassioned pitches for it, right? But at the same time, you do have to walk into a meeting with the hiring manager and say, this person is missing currently a critical skill that you have listed. They don't have it. And yet we think they're an excellent candidate to learn it, to quickly get it. So Justin, you've obviously been in the room for some of these conversations. I know Hisham, you have walked companies through this as well. So my question is for both of you, and Justin, I'll go to you first. How do you have that conversation and build it up? Because like I said, it sounds great in practice, but at the same time, you have to pitch someone who doesn't have what someone's looking for today.
Yeah, great question, Connor. So for us, it really comes down to making sure we're painting a clear picture using the data we have in front of us, right? Hisham made a great point about time to fill. That's every kind of hiring manager's arch nemesis, right? Especially in our business of shipping games. We ship a game a year, sometimes multiple in a year, right? Those are on strict calendars. There's large marketing budgets associated with them. So time to fill is paramount for us. And so one thing that we always do, and again, some hiring managers have a large appetite for it, some don't, and that's okay. But it's all about us bringing that data to the table so that we can show them, hey, if you were to look at candidates that you may have to train on, for a gameplay engineer, let's use the 3D math aspect of the example. Person's really good at geometry, but they just need to understand how to apply it to the 3D space in games, right? That's somebody that, hey, can we train for that in their first 30 to 60 days, right? Are we able to get that candidate scaled up because they have the skills elsewhere? And we're seeing that in a lot of areas, specifically around C++ development. It's used for a lot of open web stuff, API, close to the metal type of coding, but it's the paramount language here in the games industry. And so for us, we're really looking to find ways to hire those candidates that know how to write performant C++ code, but we train them to do it here in games, right? Because our version's a little different. And that, I think, is something that we're seeing over time. And the hiring managers, again, some are on board, some are not, but I think it's all about showcasing the data and giving them a realistic insight as to how it'll affect this filling that role, right? Sometimes they'll say no because the game's got to come out at a certain time, and that 30-day ramp is 30 days too many, right? And that's the business we work in. Sometimes they're pre-production, they're really interested in growing the team, and so they're super willing to take those chances and say, you know what, we have a great senior member of the team, a great lead on this team that can, need some mentorship, and they're the best at that. Let them fill that gap. Let them create that bridge between that candidate's skill gap. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing as we kind of continue to push this forward.
Perfect. Very helpful. Hisham, what do you think about people who might be questioning of hiring for potential, and how do you talk to them about that?
No, that's amazing. I love what Justin said, right? He's spot on. Because building that case for time to hire, that is absolutely necessary. But I want to point out one thing that Justin just mentioned as well. Look at how the skill set of talent acquisition is also changing. Now, Justin and his team need those change management and influencing skills, right? That maybe before they needed them, but not to that extent. Now a TA professional needs to have those change management skills and needs to go to those meetings and discuss, how this, new way of hiring will impact the business, how this new way of hiring is going to impact the company, and how that's necessary. And that is amazing. And that's what we're seeing, how that skill mix is changing. But absolutely, like, there's nothing more for me to add from what Justin has said. He's a practitioner, he's there, he's experiencing this firsthand. Building that case with time to hire becomes very, very important, as well as change management. And with change management, it's not just, it doesn't fall, on the talent acquisition's shoulder to do that. You need that at every level of the organization. It starts from the top. It really starts from the C-suite to paint that new picture for, hey, this is now the new world. That's what we're up against. And we need to switch. We need to change our mindset into this new mindset of hiring for potential.
Perfect. Justin, you nailed the question. So my next question for you is another thing I know you've mentioned that has helped you move more quickly and be more agile, which is the idea of talent rediscovery, right? So can you talk through how that's impacted you and your teams at Activision and kind of what that has led to for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's been actually one of our largest areas that we've noticed huge uptick in the Eightfold side of the implementation. We're about 41% of our 2021 hires were rediscovery hires, essentially. Those are previous applicants, people have been ingested into our ecosystem one way or another, but weren't originally hired onto the role that they came in on. For us, that's a really great sign that this is a positive endeavor for us, because it allows us to say, our businesses are different, right? We have Activision, Blizzard, and King, and within those businesses, there's multiple teams. And so, they're all within different shipping parts of their life cycle. They all have different tolerances for certain skills. and certain weights on those skills within the organization. So this, there's many times where a candidate may apply to a role for, one team at Blizzard, but they're actually a better fit for a different team. They just may have not seen that role, or that role wasn't posted when they originally applied. So we're able to start using our dispositions more smartly. You mentioned bronze and silver medalists. That's something that we try to do at scale by reducing the number of our overall dispositions so that we can unify those and make sure that those are easily searchable in a system like Eightfold. Dispositions, application date, last contacted date. You can kind of create a good combination of a search just based off of that and instantly populate your pool with people who have already expressed interest in your brand. That's something for us, as I mentioned, we get tons of applicants every year, but it's really not an identification problem, it's an engagement problem in terms of bringing people through the top of the funnel. So we always look for these novel ways to leverage our existing data to go after candidates that have already been engaged with our brand in one way or another.
Similar question to you, Justin, for the rediscovery question, but if a hiring manager is looking for, expecting a new search, right? So like how does that conversation go when you're saying, actually, we have candidates who have been just barely not quite the right fit for another position, but you can walk away with 5 candidates today instead of starting a search from scratch? Is that kind of how that conversation has gone and helped managers go from maybe the way they're expecting of a search to, go outside, to go external, and helping them realize the talent that you already have?
Exactly, and that's a great question also, Connor. It's really about, again, as Hisham mentioned, using that time to fill metric as a little bit of insight as, look, here's the reasons why this candidate may or may not have been a fit for the other team. However, based off of my conversation with them and my experience with this candidate, I don't think that is, pertinent to the selection for your role, Mr. or Mrs. Hiring Manager. And that's what we see a lot is everyone likes to take feedback as, fact and truth about it, but it's really situational, right? Everyone has their own opinions on what fits for a role and everything like that. So when we kind of objectified those data points and really looked at them agnostically, it allowed us to present that to hiring managers. And there's no hiring manager that I've experienced that wants less candidates than more candidates, even if it's just for them to review and say, no, this is the same, I would, based off of this is actually somebody I would reject as well. That's great. That's a data point for us to continue to make our searches more dynamic and continue to bring great candidates in through the top of the funnel. And so it actually helps us start on the even better foot because we know what they like and what they don't like because we're presenting candidates on both sides, right? Maybe a candidate says they only ever want to work on World of Warcraft, and that's who we present in that meeting right after. But then we also present somebody who was a near miss on another franchise, and we're able to juxtapose those directly in front of the hiring manager and come out of that intake meeting with a lot better information than the typical kind of laundry list of taking notes that happens in a lot of intake meetings. We'll see 5 to 10 candidates that the hiring manager is excited about at the end of those meetings, so our sourcers and recruiters are ready to go and start engaging with the talent.
Awesome, that's perfect. I think that's all that we have for time today. So Justin, Hisham, thank you so much for being with us. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you and our listeners did too. With that, we are wrapping up our session. So thank you to everybody for spending some time with us today. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Eightfold and how skills can help you future-proof and be more agile and proactive in this ever-changing world. Please come and join us at our virtual booth. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have, walk you through any of the content that we presented here today. And of course, you can always find us on our website if you have anything else. With that, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of TA week.